I was talking to someone about this today about being a trial lawyer, and I'm curious if you agree that like how important listening is.
Yeah.
Like how many times are you in court when another lawyer is not listening to the witness?
Yeah.
And they miss like a whole line of questioning or a kill shot. They could just kill the witness, and they're too wrapped up in their own mind of what they want to talk. Like,
yeah. Have you ever had to like tell your client to be quiet because you're listening?
Yes.
I can't tell you how many times criminal defense attorneys I'm like this.
sit down.
So the answer is yes. I get that a lot. Like, no, they're like in my ear. Like, no.
Or if they're like writing stuff down as if they're gonna help you figure. Sometimes that's helpful.
And actually, I do tell them the right, but I'm like, I usually talk to my clients a lot, but I'm like actually listening to the words.
Hey there, everyone. I'm Tom Bosworth, and this is the City of Brotherly Law. Welcome to Philly's Legal Pulse, where we chat with some of the city's and the country's best attorneys about what's really going on in our courts and our communities. Let's dive in and see what's brewing in the City of Brotherly Law.
So you can just ask me what I do, and I'll ask you what you do. But your people already know what you do, right?
Nobody knows me.
Okay, let me ask you. You're a catastrophic injury lawyer.
Yeah.
Like, what is catastrophic to you? Like, some people catastrophic means something else to any.
Amputation, brain injury, death.
Yeah.
The worst of the worst.
What's the craziest case you've ever had?
Probably the case I'm working on right now, which is on behalf of kids in my hometown who have cancer because General Electric and Monsanto polluted the whole town with a toxic, cancerous chemical that they dumped everywhere and didn't tell anybody. And it got used. The soil got used to build an elementary school.
So like all the kids have cancer now.
So there's like all these hot spots, kids with brain cancer, kids with leukemia dying. And I'm like uncovering internal memos from Monsanto where they're like talking about it in the 50s and 60s, how they know it's going to be a huge thing and they know it's going to be a problem.
So all these kids, like how old were they when they first like started like going to the school?
It's elementary. So,
and they're like older now, like my age, your age?
So some of them are like our age and they just like realize that the cancer, the tumor they had was related to that, but some are still in school there. Some are, I have an 11-year-old kid that's like fighting for his life right now.
And there's some people probably that don't even know that it'll come up when they're 40 or 50 or 60, and then they'll call you, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's sad.
Yeah, it's real sad. Yeah.
It's like hard to swallow, and that's why you're here. You know what I mean?
Right. What do you do?
Well, I'm a criminal defense attorney. So anything from like DUI to murder. So I do a lot of violent crime.
I read on your website that you won something like 18 of your first 20 trials.
Oh, dude, so
that's crazy.
Yeah, so first, I'll tell you I win a high majority of my jury trials. But the skill is not only in trial, but the skill is really kind of seeing how the trial goes. And giving an opening statement, if you know the file well, you kind of know how it's going to unfold. Mm-hmm. So I have built good relationships with my clients. So sometimes if I know the trial's going to unfold poorly, I can talk to them about not going to trial too. Right. But when I started practicing law, I graduated law school at 23 years old. Interesting. It was funny. I went to law school
barely conscious
at
when
20.
I was 23.
I turned 21 in law school.
Wow.
And I was like taking shots at the draft horse at Temple.
That's where I went.
Yeah. And people were looking at me like, this guy's not going to make it because I was in my first year. But I just turned 21. So I was very young. So I think I got my bar October, like 2 months after I turned 24. I think by November I tried my first case in a jury trial. And it was like, not like a, am I allowed to curse?
Yeah.
I'm not like a bullshit like marijuana case. It was like somebody got shot in the stomach.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I remember the judge I was in front of, he just retired recently, Sandy Bird. Like I kind of like hopped the turnbuckle, to give my client's family a hug because I won the trial. But yeah, so no, my first several trials.
What was that like being?
I was young. It was interesting. I was young. I had a lot of balls when I was young because like I think starting your own firm takes a lot. Starting your own firm out of law school takes a lot. Starting your own firm at that age out of law school takes a lot. Taking cases like that, I almost am like. Right now, it's second nature, but to me, like back then, I'm like, man, you were crazy.
Yeah. So how did you, or what do you think has led to your success in the courtroom?
Well, what I was saying earlier, the first thing is that I care about the results. So I tell people when they, come onto my firm, so let's just say you get arrested, right? A lot of lawyers would be like, oh, okay, you got a hearing March 1st, give me a few $1,000s and I'll see you there, But what we do, when you come in with me, I'm trying to get to know your background, trying to know everything about you. In some cases, it doesn't matter much, but it matters a lot in a lot of cases. Mm-hmm. So even in cases where people are guilty of what they do, which nowadays, like everything's on video, on ring cam, there's so much tech that a lot of my cases are like, I'm watching the video. But those are actually where I kind of earn my chops, to a degree, because then I can convince the judge and the district attorney or the government and say, hey, look, my client did this, but this is what's going on in his life. This is what's, his family support. This is his education. This is the background. This is the family, and this is what's like causing this. So actually, that's where I really earn my money. So if somebody calls me and it's like, my son's caught on video and he confessed and he did this, why am I hiring you? I'm like, well, he's not getting the death penalty. He's not getting life. So you could get anything from probation to 10 years. That, there's a wide range of stuff. So that's been my number one thing, is getting to know my clients. Number two, just now, I'm 43 years old. I have to think about it now. But I've been a lawyer for 20 years. You don't have that like equation that much. So, my mind is as sharp as ever, but I have 20 years of courtroom experience now. So the last jury trial I did last week, I was actually training my law clerk behind me, and I knew exactly how the case would unfold. So I knew exactly what points to hit on in my opening statement, like what, witnesses to be a jerk to, what fights to pick with the judge, which ones not, which jury instruction. So I kind of see how it's going to go, and that's what comes with trial experience. And also talking to people, not like a lawyer like I am now, talking to you, that helps, especially with jurors too. So those are some of the things that help me.
I feel like law school ruins that for a lot of people.
Yeah, you don't learn anything in law school, dude.
Especially doing what we do. I mean, when I go into a courtroom, because a lot of my cases are medical malpractice.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go in there talking like a doctor, you're done.
Yeah.
But you still have to be able to explain the concepts to people so they understand.
Yeah.
But you can't be boring, and you can't use big words.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to accomplish your goal doing that.
Yeah.
I would imagine it's the same in your cases too. But
yeah, no, I have some questions for you. So like, let's just say, obviously in my case, the end result isn't money, right? The end result usually is money in your case. So when somebody, is injured and they call you, it's not always about the money though, or it can't always be about the money, because then, they're not going to call multiple lawyers. Like, how do you convince them that you're the better option versus the next person?
Luckily, I'm not usually I'm not competing.
Right.
When someone's called because they've seen me in some case or in some video. So I'm usually
they're already like, how do I get this guy and do I have a case?
Yeah. But I feel like it's a big misconception that people that sued do it for the money.
No, they don't.
They don't, yeah. But the people, that aren't lawyers, I think they assume that they do. But everybody that I represent, they would much rather have their life back.
Yeah.
And they usually just care about making sure it doesn't happen to someone else, or making a point, or holding someone accountable.
Yeah, sometimes I can. What I try to tell people, I try to return them to, let's say they got arrested January 10th. I'm going to try to return you to January 9th, but you can't do that ever, almost. Yeah. What about one thing I've always wanted to ask some of the personal injury lawyers I ask a jury to find my client not guilty. How do you put a number on it? Because you can't. Are you allowed to ask at a jury this is worth this much? So I think you're not
in Pennsylvania.
So in Pennsylvania, you're not allowed to say, this happened and this happened, therefore I want $10 million.
Can't do it. So
how do you get them to give that big number versus the small number?
Well,
how do you do you give them signs 10 million, this, something like that, or what do you do?
Hold up a sign.
yeah, be wink,
No, but some states you can ask for a number.
Yeah.
So, in cases where there's lost wages, someone's out of work, or medical care, you can put that evidence on.
Yeah.
Right. So the jury can hear, hey, this kid, for example, I represent a lot of injured kids, permanently, never going to walk, never going to live a normal life. they'll hear evidence from an expert economist that says this kid needs, $19 million for the rest of his life to pay for all the future medical care. But I can't go into closing and ask the jury for a specific number.
Right.
At least in those cases, you have some sort of anchor. And usually what I say is that's the bare minimum here.
Yeah, because like it's like, let's say you're suing somebody for $1,000, but they jerked me around for so long for that $1,000, and I had to do X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and that's like you said, that's the bare minimum. But
yeah,
on top of it,
I think juror anger drives a lot of the amounts, because you can't ask for a number, but at the same time, I had a $15 million verdict a couple months ago where I didn't put on any evidence of economic damages. No wages. These were folks who were here not legally, my clients, who were passengers in a work van that rolled over. So they had no legal wages to claim. They had no medical expenses. And the jury came back $15 million. I mean, one of the things I said to them, I don't know if it worked in closing, was, which I got an objection to this actually, because it was like borderline. I said, it's up to you to figure out how much you're going to compensate here, but I can't tell you what that's going to be, but there better be plenty of commas and zeros. Yeah. And I don't know if Lonnie knows about this. There was a PPA person that got shot in the head.
Oh,
do you remember that?
Wasn't there like a whole show about that stuff?
Yeah.
What do you think about all
parking
that?
Wars.
There's like parking tickets. Well, in Europe, there's like a lot of things, because who you really dinging when you do these like parking tickets and these like little tickets, because it doesn't affect somebody like me or you, like that extra $35, but for somebody that like can't afford a lot, that's looking for parking, it's hitting them up. It sucks.
Yeah. Wait, so how did you end up in college so young? You went to college when you were 15?
Yeah. So here's what happened. I was a crazy kid too. My parents were making me go to college at night while I was in high school. So when I graduated high school, I was a sophomore. I had like more than sophomore credits. I had like almost 45 credits.
Where'd you grow up?
Like Bucks
here?
County,
okay.
around here. Yeah. So the day I graduated, that's what happened. I had like 45 credits. So yeah.
Wow. What's the craziest thing you've ever seen in a case?
Dude, it's I mean, the autopsy photos are never fun, dude. Like, I don't know if you want me to describe what they're like.
I see those sometimes.
Yeah. I guess recently I had a case where a client of mine, and I won this case for the record, where my client it was like a cold case. And he was charged a few years ago with allegedly killing his girlfriend in 1978. And the facts were gruesome. Like, she was pregnant, her head was severed, and like arms were chopped off, and there was a fetus on top of the thing. But the creepiest part about it was like pictures from 1978. So they like had like yellowing to it, and they could look old, and it was just like looked fake. And so that was pretty disturbing.
Wow.
But yeah, those aren't the cases that really get to me. Like, it's weird. Like, when I say get to me, where the clients kind of like, get to me, where like that they don't get to me. What gets to me is the people. I guess stalkers get to me a lot. I don't like stalkers.
I don't think anyone does.
Well, I mean, I represent people who are charged with crime. Nobody likes murderers either. Nobody likes, drug dealers. But it's weird. Is there any cases you won't take, even though like it's financially you're worth it, or your firm can handle it? Like, have you ever just said, "No, I'm not helping you"?
Very, very rarely. Very rarely. I've only fired maybe 2 clients my whole career.
Yeah.
And my threshold's pretty high.
Yeah.
Because I'm of the belief that, people go through a lot, and there's trauma, and
yeah,
I don't like to get into the business of, well, I like you or I don't like you.
Yeah, no, it's not even that I don't like it, but when they start like stalking you and yourself personally, that's the one
yeah,
thing.
The 2 times I've had to let go of people were like weird situations that like crossed the boundary of normalcy, where I had to like protect myself. Yeah.
Not to shift gears, but I'm going to ask you a question. How do you convince somebody that's been routinely victimized, and people get victimized and then they don't set boundaries and they don't hire attorneys to finally come forward and like hire you? Because there's like, there's got to be like millions of people out there that are suffering because they're victim of some sort of atrocity. But the same thing, they're victimized. So because they're victims, they're not coming forward and they're not doing all that. Like, how do you get them to do that and like open their mouths?
I don't know if I have that much power, but I do a lot of videos on social media with the idea of raising awareness and transparency about what I do, so that people know you can actually go into a courtroom and be on level footing with a multi-billion-dollar corporation. I think in most corners of our society, corporate America has like just run rampant. And I mean, look at Congress, look at their politicians. They've done nothing but, help out big corporate America. So I think people justifiably so have a pretty pessimistic view on lawyers and whether they'll actually do anything. So I try to let people know, like, look at, like, you can take on this company. You're equal in the law. You're equal in the courtroom. You get a jury of 12 people. They're not CEOs. They're not like, they're regular people of your community. And look at the results that I've gotten or other lawyers have gotten in similar cases. So then people go, oh, okay, like, it's not impossible.
Yeah. So how often are you on trial?
Once every, I would say 6 times a year.
Yeah.
But my trials are
like month or two long or whatever.
A week to a month. Like, I just got off a trial that was 20 days.
How do you that's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are some like trick? Give me like a trick that I can take back. I'll give you a trick and then just to let you know what I'm talking about.
You go first.
I'll go first. I'm not going to name this DA because he was a young kid. Crew cut, looked like what you would think district, black suit, white shirt, red tie, pin. I called this fucking kid the government 50 times in the trial. I said the government, I said if you pull the transcripts, I use the word, I love using the word the government. I said the government says this, even in my objections. I said the government wants you to think this. The government and literally it was funny. In his closing argument, he's like, I am not the government. I am John. I'm like, no, dude, you're fucking lost already. Like, it's over. But I like to use words. Like, I never use district attorney, city of Philadelphia. I say the government. Like, maybe you can take that.
Oh, dude,
I use the word the government. People hate the government.
Well, you know what one they hate with me, but they can't object to it, is the corporate lawyers.
So you use the word the corporate lawyers.
The corporate
want
lawyers.
You to think.
Yeah. And then they stand up. I had it in my trial, which I won, by the way.
Yeah.
This most recent trial. I'll be like, the corporate lawyers want you to believe that, objection, Your Honor.
And then you respond and say, they are corporate lawyers?
That's what I said. No, I feel like being a trial lawyer, and you know this better than anyone, being a trial lawyer, the difference between can you do something versus should you?
Yeah.
Like, lawyers that aren't good in courtroom get that wrong. Like, objection. And I'll go, Judge, they're a corporation. And then they sit down. Like, you just drew attention to it. Yeah. And you gave me a chance to look at the jury and have a moment where they go, huh? And I go,
Yeah.
It's like the same thing like when they object and they shouldn't, or...
It's like a higher end thing in trial advocacy where you're like going to say it and let them object to it. It's not going to get reversed because then the judge will just give an instruction and be like, ignore whatever it is. And I'm like, okay, sorry, Your Honor, I won't do it again.
I had
but they are corporate lawyers.
Cross-exam where I was just pounding the witness, and then I asked the last question, and it was a sustained objection.
Yeah.
And the younger me, the less experienced me, probably would have tried to keep, but I knew I made the point. So I just said, I think that's all I have for now.
Yeah.
It's like those moments where you're like, I know I made the point.
I'm a big believer in primacy and recency in examinations. Like, and for the listeners, like, start off with like your one or two biggest point and end with your number 1 or 2 biggest point, right? Like I don't end or begin a closing, a cross-examination or any of that. Have you ever ended a cross-examination or a direct examination early because like, oh, dude, what they just said was too crazy, I'm going to stop? Like, you had like, I don't write out my questions, but you have like a little bit of a plan, right? And I'm like, I'm going to go through this point, this point, this point. And then I got them like crying and admitting to them like, oh, I'm going to end this now. Like, have you ever done that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I had a doctor on the stand this most recent trial like start crying.
Yeah.
And it was the doctor I sued, and it was a case involving a dead child. And it was a difficult moment because she really was genuinely crying. And I did not want to interfere or, I was in the middle of a pretty heated cross, but she had a moment and I didn't want to interfere with that. And so I like gave her that space, but that was difficult.
Yeah. I told you I had a podcast that I've been filming, and I had a police officer that's my co-host. He was like crying in the middle of it. And it was like, we had to stop. It's unfortunate. I'll tell you a little bit. Can I?
Yeah, please
Yeah.
tell.
So it's my co-host is like a police officer, an active police officer in a major metropolitan area. So we have him essentially with a mask on, and we're going to have his voice all jumbled. And I'm asking him like crazy stuff, like anything you'd ever want to ask an officer. And he has no fear of being fired because he's disguised completely, his voice and everything. Like, I mean, we even covered his hands and his wrists because he had tattoos and stuff. You name it. So I'm asking him like crazy stuff of like, have you ever shot anybody? Have you ever, fudged with evidence? Have you ever lied on a police report? Like, type of stuff.
He's
like,
answering honestly?
Yeah, and he's answering honestly. My podcast is called, it's like Lawyer Meets Cop is what it's going to be. It's not going to be out maybe a couple months. So he was talking about an incident where he shot somebody, and then he's still in the community, and he sees these kids, the sons of the father that he had to shoot.
Did the guy die?
He died, yeah.
Oh, man.
And like, it's a shame because he's got like this like mask on, and eventually we're going to be blurring everything out, but I see his red eyes. I see him tearing, a whole crew in the room. It's like, you could, like, I never believed in energy and stuff until recently, but like you could cut the tension with a knife. It was just like huge.
Wow.
But yeah, no, it's powerful when that happens. You won your case, I hope, right?
Yeah. I did.
But you know what? Like, this is what trial attorney would do, is be like, hey, I appreciate that she's crying because she made a mistake, and this is how you learn from mistakes, right? Like, or something along those lines. You take a bad fact and you make it yours.
Well, the way I was able to kind of bring us back was because she was like defending herself and her team like to a degree that was absurd. Like, in other words, like her whole thing was like, we did not make a mistake, like, because we basically never make mistakes. It was CHOP, Children's Hospital Philadelphia, which is a very good, well-known institution. But I had found that she had authored medical articles where she talked about the fact that with children who have complex medical needs, which is what my client's son had, are at a higher risk of medical errors.
Yeah.
And so that was contradictory to her whole defense to the jury, which was, no, we did not make any error here. We are basically perfect. And I know we didn't make an error because we don't make errors.
Right.
So I kind of started in on her and I said, well, if I understand you correctly, what you're telling the jury here is, you didn't make an error because you know your team and that's just not something you do. Yeah. I said, well, the audience here in this case would be the jury, right? And she's
right.
like, yeah, I said, that's not always the audience you're speaking to about medical errors, is it? And she's like, what do you mean? I said, well, sometimes you write articles. I said, the audience is other doctors, other hospital administrators. Yeah. And when you talk to that audience, you've said things different about kids with special needs and medical errors, haven't you? Well, I don't know. Well, did you write, and I quote, children with special needs are at a higher rate of medical errors generally, period, end quote. Did you write that? And then
Yeah.
And I was able to say to the jury, like, she wasn't shooting straight with you.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of like she was willing to admit it happens and that it even happens more often than not with these kids, but not with her.
Yeah.
So I think
people don't like to admit their own mistakes. Have you ever had a doctor just be like, I made a mistake, I'm sorry, whatever it's worth is what it's worth? Because I feel like they probably almost never admit to making a mistake.
They never do.
I use,
Never.
I use that in my business.
With police investigations?
With anybody. So, like, people in general don't like to admit they did a bad job at something. So if I have a police detective that's taking crime scene photos, I'm like, you did a good job, right? I did this, I did this, I did this. Or a detective that did an investigation. You did a great investigation. No witnesses came forward and told you that it was this person and not that person. It's like, yeah, absolutely. So people don't like to admit on the record that they did a bad job or they made a mistake.
Well, with medical cases, I find that there's like a huge tension between the doctors and the lawyers that represent them. Because I found that doctors, and I have friends that are doctors, they're actually, for the most part, decent human beings.
Yeah.
Most of them went into it for the right reasons. Most of them have a desire to help people. And most of them, when it's a really bad case, they do want to actually admit that they were wrong. The problem is that the hospitals hire defense lawyers who get paid by the hour. And I'm not knocking being paid by the hour, but I'm just saying in this context, those defense lawyers, they know if that doctor comes in and says, fuck, I did fuck up. I should have ordered the CAT scan, and I think about it every day, and I wish I had. That case is over. It's going to settle, and then their paycheck stops.
Yeah.
So I know, because I'm less experienced. I've questioned hundreds of doctors under oath at this point. I know the ones that want to give me the admission, but they've been coached not to.
Right.
But the irony is that they end up looking worse and less credible than ever. Because they won't admit anything, and then they're out there making up this whole story that makes no sense to anybody, and they've dug themselves a deeper hole.
Yeah, because I guess they have to pay their medical insurance premiums, and they have to do this, and they have to use the doctor that they give them, and the whole back and forth type of situation. So they're probably not a big fan of their lawyers as is.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yep.
On top of the fact that people don't like to admit they make mistakes.
Yeah.
I've made mistakes. Have you made mistakes?
Every day.
Yeah, I'll admit to them.
Lawyers don't like to admit that.
Yeah, no, I've made a couple that there's a couple that is the good thing about mistakes in my field. Like if you miss a deadline, they're pretty good. The courts are about reversing it. Like there's one case in particular that's active now that literally I read on the docket that said this is the date it was denied, so I had a year from that date to file something. But as it turns out, that docket entry wasn't accurate, so I filed it late. It's my fault because that docket number is not always accurate, and I should have known it wasn't always accurate, but I relied on it. So I was able to go to the court and say, hey, look, I relied on this. I laid it all out. I thought it was accurate. This is what I thought, XYZ, ABC, and they reverse it and they open it back up. People are very forgiving when you admit to it.
Right,
the mistakes.
exactly. So you started your own firm right out of law school, or you worked for someone else first? So your whole legal career, you've had your own practice.
Yeah, no. So my wife loves it when I tell this story. I was working. I didn't know whether I wanted. I know I wanted to be in court. So if you want to be in court like every day, not just once a month, I was in 3 different courthouses today, 3 courtrooms today.
CJC.
I was in Delaware County. I was in CJC, and I had one on Zoom today. So, you're doing family law or criminal law, because if you're a courtroom, you want to be in a courtroom all the time. So I had this job for somebody, and I remember it was on Walnut Street, like kind of right down there. And it was my first day on the job, and the woman said, "Go get me a coffee," and she told me what type of coffee she wanted. And I was like a 2L or a 3L. And then I got the coffee, and then I drank it, and I left. So that's my story of how I started my own firm. I I drank it.
Did you
I'm not
ever
working
go
for
back?
anybody. No, I just
Okay,
went. I just
good.
went. It was actually, think about it though. Like if you're a Starbucks barista, that could be the most important moment of somebody's life that you're serving this coffee. Like, you know, somebody asked me to order them a coffee. I'm looking at the coffee, and I looked at it, and I looked at it, and I just drank it, and I walked away.
Was this like premeditated?
No.
Or was this?
No, it was like
you got
literally-
that coffee and you're like, screw this.
No, it was like I got the coffee. I'm like literally standing in line. I had the coffee in my hand. It was like I was supposed to be there at 9. This is like 9:05, bro. Like I'm like getting the fucking coffee for her. The first thing she asked me to do, and I'm like looking at it like it's in my hand, and then I'm just drank it, and then I kept it moving.
The rest is history.
That's it. The rest is history. So now I'm working for myself. So I opened up. I didn't have that much money. My grandfather gave me $5,000, which was awesome, and I opened up. I got
Was
an
he
ad.
a lawyer or no?
No, the immigrants. You know, so I opened an ad in the Metro. It was like this big. You got to keep in mind this is 2005, so there's no real
What's
internet.
the Metro?
The Metro is like the paper they hand out in the subway. Like,
like
they
the
don't do
little
it that much.
pamphlet, yeah.
Like a newspaper.
Yeah.
This was Yellow Pages time too. I didn't have enough money for the Yellow Pages
In Philly.
In Philly.
Yep.
So that's how I started. It was like $750 a month. I had an ad in the Metro. I had a lawyer named Anthony. He let me use his office. I'm a friendly guy. You met me right away, and immediately we're friends. So he let me stay in his office until I could afford my own, until this, and I've been blessed to kind of have a lot of skills where like people want to come to me for help all the time. Like people always want to come to me for help. They want my opinion, and I see it. I get it. So a lot of people wanted to come hire me, right? Like right as I started winning cases, they see me in court.
Right.
You know, the way I actually listen to people when I call, like they call, it's very important. So as you do a good job, like things flourish. So right away it started to go.
I was talking to someone about this today about being a trial lawyer, and I'm curious if you agree that like how important listening is.
Yeah.
Like how many times are you in court when another lawyer is not listening to the witness?
Yeah.
And they miss like a whole line of questioning or a kill shot. They could just kill the witness, and they're too wrapped up in their own mind of what they want to talk. Like,
yeah. Have you ever had to like tell your client to be quiet because you're listening?
Yes.
I can't tell you how many times criminal defense attorneys I'm like this.
sit down.
So the answer is yes. I get that a lot. Like, no, they're like in my ear. Like, no.
Or if they're like writing stuff down as if they're gonna help you figure.
Well, I do tell them-
sometimes that's helpful.
And actually, I do tell them to write, but I'm like, I usually talk to my clients a lot, but I'm like actually listening to the words. Also, but you're not only listening, if you're in front of a jury, you're watching the jurors to see like how they're like reacting to these. Cause like sometimes like in your case, you need multiple jurors. Like I just need one, bro.
I need 10. You need reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
One juror to say no, not guilty.
Yeah, I very rarely actually get hung juries. I usually do get like good verdicts, but the thing is like I still do like to make eye contact with particular jurors in my closing. You know, I'll pay attention to if I have, you know, somebody medical, nurse or doctor on my jury, and then like if they do, then and it's something on the police report, I'll refer to it like the medical chart and like all kinds of stuff. There's a big art to it, you know. There's a real big art to this. The more and more trials you do, yeah.
I feel like Temple did a good job.
Temple was great, but actually the irony is that I wasn't the best student ever, so I didn't really get into. I didn't do their mock trial program. I actually got into criminal defense through the public defender's office. I did a clinic, and the clinic they let you try cases, and right away I was trying cases like as a 3L, and I loved it. I was doing great at it, and that's kind of what taught me. And a lot of this stuff, you know, I learned on the job, but I was doing well right from the rip, just because how I am.
Was Lou Natale there?
No.
Do you know Lou? Oh, he was a big criminal defense lawyer, taught at Temple.
No.
But he was my favorite professor. He was such a criminal.
What year did you graduate?
2016.
I was 2005.
He was like the most criminal defense.
Did you have James Struzella?
No, I've heard of him, though.
He was my favorite. Schellenberger was there.
I had him. He's great.
Yeah.
But Natale, because he's a criminal defense lawyer, every hypo he would do in law school, you give you hypotheticals. Like, what do you think? Every hypo, he would go, where's the mens rea?
Yeah.
Like, where's the mental state? Like, everything. He was like South Philly Italian.
Yeah.
Did like mob cases and stuff.
What do you do when the judges don't know what they're doing? Like, I know for a fact there's tons of judges that don't know what they're doing. And, like, I know judges don't know what mens rea means. And, like, what do you do when that happens? Like, how do you handle it? One time I was pretty mad when the judge don't know. But, like, how do you handle that situation where the judge does not know what mens rea is or the judge doesn't know the law?
I usually try to start by being very deferential and explaining it, like, kind of like, judge, like, actually. But I mean, my last trial, I had a really, really hard judge who was really not correct about.
Do you want to tell me off camera who it was?
Off camera, yes.
Yeah, I probably do. In Philly, or?
Yes, in Philly. And it just became clearly that this judge was not going to hear me out. And I'm not talking, a lot of things in our field are gray. I'm talking black and white stuff that this judge was getting wrong. And at a certain point, I just had to, like, keep making a record. And it's uncomfortable, but I had to do it. I mean, luckily we still won, but I don't know how you'd handle it. But
yeah, no, sometimes you ask for the law clerk, or, it's tough. It's just, sometimes I try not to, this is going to sound really kind of, how would I say it? Not in line with what I said earlier, that I really care about my clients. But, like, I care about my product right up until the moment where the judge makes their decision. Because if the judge goes the other direction, like, I can't do that. So I really do care about my product a lot, but I can't take it, like, so personally when that happens.
Yeah.
I've done that for, like, a very long time in my life, and it, like, kills you. Mm-hmm. It can be killer. Because, like, you grow to care about your clients, and people look at you, oh, you're a criminal defense attorney. I'm like, oh, everybody has a soft side, like, teddy bear side to them. Yeah. And so I try not to be too married when the result happens. I do care about getting that good result, but when you do that, then you get all your wins. Like, that's when they start rushing through, and that's when the good results happen. Well,
Lonny Fish, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. This was great. And
I told you it was going to be easy, right?
we
talk about where they can find you.
Yeah. If people need your services.
If you've been injured as a result of the police, like they beat you up or something, or if you've been accused of the crime, which is my main jam, theywin.com is my website.
Theywin.com.
Easy. Theywin.com. Liberty Law Team is my law firm. I own it. Everybody that works for me, we have a big team. Right now we're up to like 14 people, a couple lawyers, doing some pretty good work. That podcast I was telling you about, it's going to be up and running maybe soon. Lawyer Meets Cop. Check it out. You'll like it.
Sweet. Thanks, Lonnie.
Thank you, my man.
And that's a wrap for this episode of City of Brotherly Law. I'm Tom Bosworth, reminding you that in Philly, we don't just practice law, we live it, breathe it, we fight for it every day. This city was built on grit and determination. That's exactly how we approach justice. That's how we approach cases. Join us next time for more straight talk and legal insights from the heart of Philadelphia. Until then, stay tough and keep it real, Philly.